This is Raul Lopez, and you're listening to How Do You Say Success in Spanglish? The path to success isn't easy. For minorities and people of color, many attempt this journey with little to no guidance. Join me as I sit down with individuals who share their stories of perseverance so that together we can learn how to say success in Spanglish. What's good, mi gente? This is Raul Lopez. Thanks again for joining us today. I have a very special guest. I have a good friend of mine, Persjha Conry. I'm going to quickly read over her bio. Project to Ph.D. I am the poster child for existing as I sought to live, a teacher, professor, editor, homeowner, and public researcher, Dr. Persjha Conry, a.k.a. Perj. Hey, Perj, how's it going?
I'm well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time out to be here on my podcast. I think to kind of start off, I've known you from back in the day when we grew up in Pawtucket, but I know your story starts even before that. So if you want, tell me a little bit about, where did Perj start off from?
Well, as my daddy disgustingly says, it all started on a hot day in Brooklyn. I tend not to let him finish that story. But yes, so my mother moved from Brooklyn, New York City to Pawtucket, Rhode Island. While she did move quite some distance, unfortunately, socioeconomic circumstances really didn't change too much. When you said the projects to PhD, you know that I'm literally making reference to housing projects. So living in the projects where people are assumed undereducated and have a lack of resources. And then it's like, here I am now in society and people are like, doctor this and doctor that. And it always tickles me a little. I'm
like. So you said you grew up in the projects, socioeconomically. I mean, Pawtucket's a poor city, a poor little city in Rhode Island. So we all kind of grew up, aka the bucket, as we all like to call it.
Yeah.
What I mean? So it wasn't always the nicest upbringing and stuff. So what was like living? How was life living in the projects for you at that point?
Gosh, I'm gonna say this first, but then I'm gonna add on to it. So I don't want to exclude the fact that there is joy in lower socioeconomic status and, circumstances. I don't want to exclude that we play all day, that we laugh, that we build thick skin by cracking on each other, and that we ran. And, not only did we come from lower socioeconomic status, but also times were different. So we used to ride bikes all day. Our parents had no clue where we were for hours. You know what I mean? So things like that. So that's some of the joy, playing basketball, playing jump rope, things like that. As far as circumstances, when I go in retrospect and I really think about a lot of the stuff I've been through, it's like, damn, you didn't even realize what you were going through as you were going through it. For example, my dad, he was on drugs. So many parents were, particularly the fathers in the projects. Crack was the drug of choice. It was the 80s. And my sisters and I, and they'll tell you, we had a collection, we had a treasure box and we had the crack pipes because we used to find them in these hidden places. So when you find something in a hidden place, you assume oh, this must have value. So we literally had a shoebox of burnt spoons and crack pipes that we collected. And one day we so happily showed our mom, we got treasure, mommy, look. And she was devastated, So that is just a perfect example of how there's joy and you have no idea what you're going through. But I'll give you more of a synopsis. So even in New York, we were in the projects. My mother and father's family were in the projects in New York, from Marcy projects to Albany projects to pink houses, just all over New York City. When my mother moved, we moved to projects in in Pawtucket called the Manor back then, Crook Manor. Similar, like I said, a lot of crack, a lot of drug use, a lot of violence. Not to us though. Some of the guys protected us, but then sometimes they'd be like, yo, Perj, take this bag. And I would take a bag and hide it under my bed. And then when they would take it back, I'd be like, oh, There's guns in there, there's drugs in there, but they knew we were good. So to some degree, they protected us, you know? So there's these unsaid kind of laws and rules when you grow up in that status. If they see good in you, sometimes they'll tell you like, yo, this is not for you. You stay safe. You know what I mean? Harder parts of the drug habit were like, you know, when you have an addiction, you desire to feed it. So I'll give you my own story. One time, I was always a scholar, and that was just God's gift to me. And the only time in the history of my education that I ever missed homework, my father stole my backpack and he sold it for back.
Oh man!
And I was like, come on! I was like, that's my 64 box crayons with the sharpener in the back is gone. Like, come on. But yeah, there were tough times, bro. My father, that's what was going on with him. His mother died and he turned to drugs. My mother at the same time was becoming fatally, eventually ill. She was terminally ill. She died when we were still children. There was 6 of us and she was always raising somebody else's child. And then we were in the projects. After her death, we raised ourselves. There were no other adults that stepped in because there were too many of us.
Yeah.
They said, don't break them up. Keep them together. They're strong together. The project showed up, man. We were together for about 1.5 years before the courts found us. When I tell you, you couldn't move in that courtroom, the whole community was like, you cannot separate these children. They have done this for 1.5 years without you even knowing. So I personally was emancipated as a child.
How old were you when you were emancipated?
16.
16, yep. And how old were you when your mother passed away?
15 turning 16.
15 turning 16. Mm-hmm. And so...
second oldest, by the way.
Yeah, second oldest. I know you and your sister, you know. And so for my question for you, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well, but, you know, when you were, you said your blessing, you think that you had a scholarly mind, you were very scholarly on that. And yes. How does, you know, losing a parent, period, it's major, affects people tremendously. You know what I mean? My parents are still alive today, thank God, you know, and I'm in my 40s, and God forbid something happened to them, it would destroy me and destroy people, whatever. And how does Persjha bounce back from that? How were you able to maintain yourself and keep you being you? Because you've always been you. You know, since I've known you, Persjha's always been Persjha. You know what I mean? Despite all the hardship that you've gone through, you know, people have always seen you as a positive person. You've always been scholarly. You know, I'll talk a little bit more about some stories I have with you. But you know, so tell me, how were you able to? What helped you get through all that?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. And thank you so much, because your words mean so much to me. That positivity. I always say that my mother actually parents from the grave. Mm-hmm. When I say that, to me, that means that there are certain mustard seeds, small things that you can put into your children that outlive even you. And one of those things that she imparted into her children was God. Mm-hmm. You know, so everything was, you know, this is God's plan. You got to trust God. Mm-hmm. I mean, up until this lady, it was her too. Her dying day, Raul, I went to visit her at the hospital. She said, Persjha, mind you, I'm 15. She's like, Persjha, you got to see the doctor. He's fine as hell. He looked like Will Smith. I was like, how you feeling? Like, that's what I'm here for. You know what I mean? So she still carried that humor, and she was herself until the day she departed. Mm-hmm. But she imparted God within us. And I would be lying if I told you that we were a stranger to hard times already. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we watched her work through hard times. And I feel like one of the secrets, and it's not a secret, it's really well known to some degree, but just to coin it, to working through hard times is to hold on to what the joy is at that time. Mm-hmm. Hold on to the excitement of the possibility of the future, you know? You're like, yeah, this is where I am now, but watch what, you know, give me some time and I'm going to be in this other place. Mm-hmm. But when you do that, you also have to be making steps towards it. You know, you can't have it be a wish. You have to act on it as a plan, you know?
And I think that's a common thing that we see a lot, especially when we're in poor areas where, you know, everybody got a wish. Everybody's got a dream, you know what I mean? But most don't act on it. And, that's right. And go back to you, once again, you said you were a scholarly person. was the motivation for you being scholarly the fact that, hey, I'm going to get out of here and things are going to get better for me? Or were you always just kind of motivated by being scholarly? Like, did you know early on that, yeah, I'm going to make it out of here and I'm going to,
Well, let me say this to some people. Some people may identify with it. I really identify with the community that is neurodivergent. Mm-hmm. If someone doesn't know what neurodivergent means, it is manners by which your mind, the brain, works differently than common, than what is normative, right? When I say I identify as that, I'm OCD. Like, I'm not the OCD that women are like, I'm so clean, I'm OCD. Like, I don't even know what that is. I'm real deal, like, you know what I mean? And then also, there are people with ADHD. There are people with all of these different ailments, maybe on the spectrum slightly, things like that, right? And you have just like a whole entire different mindset, right? Which is what I think some people can sort of identify with, because we're not always textbook or perfect, So I just want to put out there, I am totally imperfect in the mind, right? But the reason I identify as scholarly, a couple of reasons, or why I like it. I used to love proving people wrong. That is one of my favorites. Like, actually, according to,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was like a sort of competitive spirit thing, right? Also, Raul, to be completely honest with you, it was a gift. Like, I'll tell you, for example, I don't ever remember being taught to read. I could just read. Sesame Street did enough for me that I was like, oh, okay, I get it, and some of us get it quickly like that and some of us don't. But as for how you see success or paint your way to success in the way that your mind works, you figure it out and you roll with what you have, So I was aware that I was scholarly. My mom, one thing that she did do, and she did this with all of her children, she told my brother Rakim, basketball will take you all around the world. She told my sister Isha, your voice, the singer, is going to take you all around the world. To me is what I was trying to get to. She said, you too damn smart for your own good. I used to get in trouble a lot because of my ability to just sit back and think. Started talking really late. In fact, I was deemed a select mute. My mom took me to the doctor over and over, and they would be like, she can talk, she just opted not to. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, being a selective mute has more to do with control than trauma. People always been like, you must have been through a lot. And it's just, if you can control one thing, control it. And for me, that was my voice. Amigo, later, it transcended to education. That was the environment that I had control over, right? Because I'm like, yeah, I could wow this teacher. She's going to be sweating me, right? I remember, and I know we have limited time, but there was this one teacher, and she's the one that put me into advanced placement, and I didn't like her for it because I wanted to be with the homie. But she taught us how to begin prepositional phrases, right? To this day, and I'll tell you this story again very quickly. I remember them: aboard, about, above, across, after, against, along, among, around, at, before, behind, below, beneath, beside, between, beyond, by, down, during. Like, I could run from A to Z on how to start a prepositional phrase, right? And I actually got in trouble for that. Like, she was like, oh, if you can actually, you cheated, she said. And I said, I didn't cheat. And she's like, well, if you got it just like the book. I said, that's how you taught it. And she said, well, if you could do this, you don't belong here, right? And remember, I told you that those moments of proving people, I was like, yeah, I got something for you, miss. So yeah, it gave me control. It gave me a sense of control.
I mentioned in my introduction episode that I always wanted to go to the Boys and Girls Club, but that's where my boys were at. The Boys and Girls Club, that's where my boys were at. And after school, I could go and hang out, play ball, play pool, go to the gym, whatever, but all my boys were rough, So my dad didn't want me hanging out in the Boys and Girls Club because all the kids he saw outside were rough. You know what I mean? Like, and so, excuse me. So, you were the one that mentioned Keystone to me, the program in there, because you guys had done a program where I think someone in the project had drowned. And I think
oh my gosh.
and then you guys ended up creating a CPR training program in the
Yeah.
projects,
Yeah.
and with the help of Keystone,
Yeah.
and so I always remember you were always giving back to your community, and you're really the main reason I joined Keystone, because I wanted an excuse to go to the Boys and Girls Club, and I knew to do that I had to tell my dad something was going to be good for college, and I knew Keystone was community service. So I was like, that's literally the first thing I signed up for when I went there, and that's when we were doing a lot of stuff with Keystone, which actually helped me out. I ended up getting a couple scholarships for college through Keystone, through the mentors there or whatever. So, I think, but, to come back to you, how do you think that the community building, because, that's one thing you don't really, I think people don't always think about when they think projects. They think the project's just a project. Poor people, guns, drugs, violence, gangs, but your projects helped you guys out when your mom died, tried to keep you guys together, and even when bad things happen in your project, you gave back to your project, they say it takes a village, and even sometimes that village might be a project, do you think that the projects help raise you, not raise you like bring you up, or raise you up higher to a higher level than you might have thought originally?
Without the shadow of a doubt, unquestionably, I love the connection that you just made, and in a multitude of ways. Like, si yo quiero, yo puedo comunicar en español. Where did that come from? Hablando con los padres de mis amigos desde cuando yo era niña. You know what I'm saying? So it was that. It was protecting them. So when we were going in stores, I was like, stop yelling at her. She said this. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was them giving back by like, here's food. I made rice today. I made this today. How are you? In fact, upon my mother's death, from my projects alone, about over $20,000 was collected to go forth and helping us with rent to start off. Like, look at that. I'm not even just saying support wise. I'm saying monetarily, these people are your brothers and sisters. It's like growing up in trauma together. You know what I mean? You don't know it's trauma until you come out of it and you start reflecting, just like the story that we discussed earlier. But absolutely, the projects is where I got my start in community service, which led me to Keystone, in which I input thousands of hours, and Pawtucket recognized some of us for that.
I was going to mention the team wall. We got put into the team wall of fame. Me and you were both on that list, and I think the top person. I don't know if they gave like a scholarship or money, or there was something. There was a good, the top person. You were like the team of the year. Team of the year.
Youth of the year.
Youth of the year. And so I remember that one, and I'm over there, and I'm like, that competitive edge comes into you. I'm like, oh man, I really hope I can do it. What do I got to do to do it? What do I got to do to be it? We didn't even know we were going to be. I don't know. I didn't know we were going to be nominated or anything like that. They just said, oh, you guys are in the Pawtucket Team Hall. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't even know that existed. And so then I get there, and we're there, and I was like, oh yeah, Persjha's there. I'm going to lose. I'm not going to win this.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, Persjha's going to win this. I was like, well, I can't compete with that. I was like,
nah, Raul, I'm going to tell you why. You don't understand that just because my story sounds like, oh my gosh, lifetime. Yours does too. You just don't realize it, because when you live it, you don't acknowledge that, right? Yeah. I don't know what it is to come to another country and begin new. Yeah. I don't know what it is to be the parent because my parents can't communicate in the native tongue. Yeah. I don't know what it is to be put in adult business because my parents need me to translate. Yeah. I don't know what it is for those of our brothers and sisters who are undocumented. I don't know what it is to fear the law for that. That's why I could be so uprighteous and go against the police, because I don't fear that they're going to come from my family. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know what it is to have the expectations of upholding the American dream. Which is when a lot of people come to this country, it's like, listen, go to college, we're rich. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I say that to voice that we all have different struggles, totally different struggles. Definitely. And it's about sticking to that light, sticking to the joy.
And I think I think motivation definitely is a factor, and you went through so much darkness that you were able to still see the light through all that as well, and I think that's really really beautiful. And so we get to high school. We're in high school. You're 16 years old. You've lost your mother. You're trying to work. The next thing is, and I know from a fact, for me, our high school was not very good at helping us get to college. They tried their best, but they just did not have the resources. I was blessed to be in Upward Bound, and they kind of gave me that extra push. You know what I mean? What was that journey to try to get into college for you? Like,
I'm gonna be honest with you, it wasn't a journey. The reason why is because through some of the programs for Boys and Girls Club, I wasn't Upward Bound, but just like you was, I was a crusader, right?
Yeah, crusader. Yeah.
For me, people wanted to see me win. And the reason that people, I believe, or perceive that people wanted to see me win is because they're like, this person is going through some that even adults would find hard. And they're not seeing themselves as a victim. They're out there trying to reach, trying to do whatever it is that they can do. If I was, again, completely honest, my grades and being in advanced placement and my circumstance, my story carried me. So I had the guidance counselors or whosoever pulling me like, yo, listen, you need to sign up for this program. And I'm over here signing up. I had no idea what I was signing up for. The next thing you know, I'm starting college through the TD program at University of Rhode Island, which is a magnificent program. So is my story. You said community. You guys really just took me to the finish line.
Yeah, no, and that's beautiful. I mean, that's wonderful. And sometimes people can recognize the light in people, and they try to guide them. And that's the same thing. That part of this whole podcast. I hope we can help guide people. And so, for college, what was URI like for you? How was your experience in at URI when you went there? I know that this might have been one of the first times you actually moved
left
out
the
of
project.
home. Left the project, right?
Yeah, you can say it.
Yeah.
It was like another project, but people had parents because you think about it, it's like these brick buildings and kids that drink and party live there. It was tough, Raul. They have all of the support that you need there. I will be honest with you. They had counselors there. They have, if you go through the talent development program, which is a magnificent program that focuses on inner city children and mostly Latino and Black. Minority, let me say that too, because there's all different minorities, Asian descent, etc. And they give you a summer there, and if you could get more 2 Bs or better on the 2 classes, then you are admitted and you begin that journey. So it was beautiful in that way, but for me it was hard because I was a shell of myself. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know. And when I say I didn't know who I was, I've always known in some small way, but it was like this adult person. Who is this adult person? What is romance? You know what I mean? I didn't drink until my senior year or get involved with boys. So ladies, that's another tip. Leave them alone for a little while.
and so, I think you hit a good point there when we talk about college and university. That we come in from one identity to another identity, and you just find your identity. And like for me, when I got to college, my identity was the smart kid at my school. You know what I mean? Things were easy. I didn't study. I was tutoring all the seniors. You know what I mean? The seniors that graduated because I helped them pass chemistry.
I know, that's what I mean? Right.
And then I get to college and I felt dumb, and I felt that I wasn't, and I think imposter syndrome hits hard too. When you're going for orientation, and I'm like, oh, I got 1150 on my SAT, and they're like, oh, I got 1300, and I was drunk the night before, and I woke up and I showed up a half hour late, and I'm like, okay, we're not on the same level. You know what I mean? Like,
but you are those sweethearts.
No, I don't know, but it's just, it's the different levels. So where you're like, I came from a poor thing, and you feel sometimes that my story got me here more than my capabilities, and so it takes you a while to figure out what I'm good at, and eventually, I did graduate, and I totally get that. You're stuck into a situation where you're like, who am I? Because this isn't where I grew up. This isn't what I'm from, and these aren't my people. You gotta find your people.
That's right. I love what you just said. I'm gonna say exposure and resources. I realized that as I've gone through time, like you're right. We are those of us who go to college in our high schools, we were the it kids, a lot of us. Like we didn't have to try for anything. But bear in mind, now you're talking about money too, because people who can afford generally have money, right? So now you're talking about exposure to certain language. You're talking about resources that you and I just did not have. And we don't know that until we get this age, So you're right. Identity is a major factor when you start in college.
So college, we're going through college. How did you do in college? Were you able to succeed? Okay, did you struggle?
Oh gosh, that was a mess. My first, let's just say my first year, I was like, my GPA was in the twos, like 2 point something. But in my defense, I didn't understand how to read a syllabus. I didn't know how to access certain things. Let me tell you this. The first book that I have ever purchased academically was for my PhD.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I never bought a book. I didn't know to follow it, go to the store. And even if I did know, some of those books were like $500. I'm up in school, emancipated as a minor, ward of the court, orphan. Like I definitely did not have $500 to go get a biology book, So
yeah. So how did you get through it?
Hustler.
so how did you get
hustler?
So how did you get through with all that stuff? I mean, I know not having, at this point, I'm guessing who was back home? Was it your sister, or was everybody already kind of separating at that point?
We were beginning to separate, but here's the thing: everybody's thinking about it from a 2023 standpoint. If you didn't have money or parents, you damn sure didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, weirdly and oddly enough, the University of Rhode Island was long distance from Pawtucket. Oh. So I couldn't call them. So it was like, I was like out there on my own floating, just separate. I don't even know how I got there, like who dropped me off or anything. It's all just a blur, which is synonymous with trauma, right? It's just like, I just block out the parts that kind of hurt and keep it rolling. But yeah, how I dealt with it, tenacity, honestly, like the street savoir-faire, like survive, you know what I mean? So when I say air hustler, of course I'm using colloquial terms, slangs and stuff like that. But let me tell you something about me. I did not miss a class. And that actually goes to school too. I got and this is grace and glory to God, a pen from the President of the United States. I didn't miss any school from kindergarten till I graduated 12th grade.
Oh, wow.
And I was the same way. My mother regarded education so highly.
Yeah.
She would always tell us about the past. And she would say, my people would die to know how to read, to be taught, and things of that nature. And I expect you to understand and to acknowledge that people would die for that. And so you do what you can do,
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I would air hustle. I would go to those classes. I would listen to those professors. I would listen to the class discussion, and I would make sense of it.
And at what point in college did you start thinking, I'm going to go further. I'm going to go beyond just my bachelor's and start thinking about getting a master's or a PhD?
I love that you asked me that question. For me, it was a little bit more on the side of trauma and less on the side of I'm going to keep going and keep this, up. I realized, remember I told you control? Remember I used that term?
Yeah.
And first it was my voice for about 10 years. Then it was school. I could be deemed good here. I could be marveled here. They're as long as I do what I'm supposed to do, they're going to love me here. And then when I graduated college, I lost that. And a lot of people don't talk about that either. Like if you think about it, if you go to college right after high school, you have been in school for your entire life, pretty much, right? 5 or better. Some people do preschool, so 3. So you go from 3 to 22, 23, and school is it. So if you can't thrive anywhere else, you can thrive in school, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you finish and it's just like, all right, here, real world,
You got bills and student loans to pay. So.
By the way, and you might not get a job with what you went to school for, but good luck.
Yeah. And I mean, for us, when we were growing up, everybody was telling us college this, college that, college this. You're going to be rich. You're going to make all this money. You're going to get out the hood. You're going to get all this stuff. You're going to make it. You're going to make it. Whatever. Forget student loans. They'll be paid off quick. They'll be paid off quick. And then 9/11 happens. The economy goes to crap, and it's not the same. You know, we're getting out of college with our degrees, making the same amount of money we probably could have made if we went to the factory right after high school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it takes some time, I think, for us to kind of get there. But what, at what point did you go back to school, or what made you decide to go back to school?
Believe it or not, it was really life occurrences.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced the loss of someone very, very close to me who used to help me with Mace. And I was like, oh my God, like I had one of those moments like, yo, how am I gonna go? What am I gonna do? And before he died, he said to me, he's like, hey, Persjha, can you take this class for me? And I was like, well, is my name gonna be on a degree? So he also imparted the idea of like, go back to, like, he imparted that in conjunction with trauma. And then I was like, I thought to myself, hey, young ladies, if you're gonna have a family, I was like, that the teaching schedule still allows you to be with your children, right? Because they're in school around about the same time that you're in school. So then, the clock started, the little dry little machinery in here started, thinking and running again. And I'm like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a leave from work under the pretense of depression, because I was like, in the real world, they actually take depression as a real thing that you could really be medicated for. And it is a real thing, but we're so accustomed to moving through depression. And that's another, believe it or not, key to making it to where you want to make it to. You cannot stop when it hurts.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're going to be null and you're going to feel bland, but you got to make those motions show up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think for a lot of us, we don't have the luxury of being able to take time off and say, I'm going to stop work because, you could feel depressed, you could be unhappy, you could be in pain. At least for my parents too, they were immigrants. They were working two jobs and 12-hour shifts, sometimes 12, 13-hour shifts, not because they wanted to, because they had to. So, sometimes we don't have the luxury for that. And so, I think it's true. A lot of people don't take the opportunity to be able to say, hey, I'm going to take time off for a mental break, and I mean, you took time off for a mental break and you decided to go back to school.
Well, no, I spun it. Let me tell you, I manipulated it. I was like, I've been going all my life and I'm going to keep going. So that I took time off under the pretense of a mental break and returned to school. So what that allowed is the money that they owed me for vacation and everything, they had to pay me out. Right? Then I started looking through resources, and I was not too proud because when I say proud, I don't mean of myself. I mean, in general, having a high level of pride doesn't allow you to have help. So I'm like talking to my neighbors, talking to everybody like, oh girl, man, I'm not, when the money for my job finished, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. My neighbors, and I love them to death. They would be like, Persjha, listen, go to this office and tell them this and see if you could get your rent paid. Go to this office. So now it became a matter of resources, right?
First, we go back to the whole community thing. The community.
Yes, every time you see me dip back, exactly. So, and then it's also not being too proud. If I was one of those people that was like, I have a degree now, don't talk to me, just call me doctor. Like, no, I'm like, yo, what up? Like, I don't lose track of who I am and who I was. Like, we are who we are all the way through. I love when you tell me your story. You're still that baby boy that immigrated from Peru, but you're the man now too. You know what I'm saying? People think that you lose who you were to become who you are, and that's not a good way to think about it. You are who you are. There's a child's book that says this. This is the main idea of it. I am who I am when I was 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. So all of that, be it goodness, joy, love, frustration, positive, negative, it stays with you. So I'm chopping it up with her, speaking back and forth with her. And she's like, yeah, go to this place, girl. They pay my rent. Go to that place. By the time I was done doing everything that this woman says, I call her auntie now. By the time I was done doing everything she said, I was getting money back. Like, the rent was paid for a little while. But I'm going to tell you too, it was also a leap of faith. We have gut feelings and we have spiritual feelings. And a lot of times we're like, no, God, well, if I do leave, I don't know how I'm going to do it. And when you do stuff like that, you deny God the space to come in with a miracle for you. If you stay safe, it's funny because I make mention of this all of the time. Pocahontas said it once in a song. Disney, I'm going to say it different so y'all don't try to get funny and sue. But she, in the song about the river, she said the water is ever changing and ever flowing. She said, but people cannot live that way. We pay a price to be safe. We lose our chance at ever knowing. So I'm not safe. Understand that, okay?
You talk about Mace, so you're your son. You know what I mean? So you're going through all this stuff, and you had to tell me a little bit about your story with your son and how, being a parent and going to school and doing all that stuff. Like,
oh my gosh, you keep leading me back to community. Yeah. Okay. Oh, we're recording. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
This is my good side. Okay. So
let me, go ahead.
God gives me a baby. It's a little tricky, especially because once I finished URI, I went back to New York. I had great memories of my mother there. And I felt like going back to Pawtucket would have been detrimental to me at the time. So I went to New York. So when I had my child, I was still in New York. And the community, I know a lot of people are like, oh, my family is messed up or this is messed up, but you can rebuild your community. You can rebuild who you have. You can extend your family through love. It's not always blood. So the same lady that I made reference to that was telling me, go to this office, go to HRA, go here, go there. Let them say no, she said to me. You don't say no yourself, you check, right? She watched Mace for me. So I found the most intensive program that I could find. Like, oh, I could get a double master's in a year. This is it. All right, it's showtime. I almost didn't sleep that year because by that year, yes, you heard me. By day, I was in the classroom getting hours. So from essentially 6:50 a.m. until 3, I'm in the classroom. I'm getting the hours that are necessary to be trained, right? This is the year of not working, the only year, because I've worked every year of my life since age 14, except this year while I was going to school intensively. So I was in the classroom teaching by day to get my training and get, certified and everything like that. By night, I would have classes from 4 p.m. to 11 at night. Then at 11, I would have to come home, get my baby. She lived in the same building as me. So I would have to go upstairs, get my baby. She had already had him fed. He would be tired, like sleeping. So I would bring him downstairs, love on him, hug him, caress him. And sometimes that's the time you have while you sleep. Is to, and then when he was sleeping again, I would write papers, sometimes until the morning.
Mm-hmm. And then wake up and start all over again, right?
For a year straight. But remember I said sometimes you have to live in the future. My vision was set on, you could do this. You only have to do this for 12 months. You can do this. And I did exactly that. You can endure a little bit of suffering for a lifetime of betterment, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's a good way to keep things in perspective too. I think in time also pass. Everything will go through, and sometimes you just gotta try to do it and get it done. And then so you finished. You went to school. You got your master's. You got a double master's in 1 year.
That's regular and special education. Mm-hmm.
And then the following year, well, then when did you decide to do your
The
PhD?
PhD. So my third master's is in philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of happened along the journey. Like I was talking to now this last program, now these young parents and these younger people are so blessed. Well, when we started out our journeys, you didn't see education online as much as you see it now.
Yep. Yep.
So now, essentially, after work, you could sit in your, in your house, and in doing so, log on, try to understand, try to make space, but still have somebody there with your children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Needless to say, my third university, because I did the University of Rhode Island, I did Metropolitan College of New York, and then my third was online, was Walden University. So after having spoken with my academic advisors, they're like, listen, you know how they could say, oh, classes align, everything you're dealing with here is a realm of philosophy. So, make sure you just conquer that. You just need this extra and you got that. So I did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the long haul, it was on the way to my PhD. I started my PhD the same year that I graduated my master's, because I was like, while I'm in this mindset, let's keep it going. While you can write a paper, do it. Sometimes when you are distant from something, it becomes harder for you to do.
Yeah, it's I think one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't try to go to grad school right away. Because I was like, oh, I'm going to take some time. I'm going to work, make some money, and then I'll go to grad school when I can afford it a little better. Because I was still kind of thinking things were going to be financially great after college. But you step away from it for a year or 2 years. It's so much harder to just jump back in. That right. 1 year becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 15. Every time I was ready to start doing it, there was something that came up and would hold me back. You know what I mean? Whether it's losing my job, financial situations, family,
and
children, marriage.
You're giving up gold right now. You're giving gold because that's so necessary. Like, people should know, jump into it.
Yeah, don't stop swimming. Yeah, it's like
there's always going to be a reason to wait.
it's like that, like Dory from Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming. Like, just keep swimming. Like, if you stop swimming, it's going to be a lot harder for you to move forward. It's keep them. It's one of the things that my old boss would say is, it's a lot easier to keep momentum going than restarting it. Because if you keep rolling with it, it's just going to go further. So,
absolutely.
So you ended up going to. You got your master's with the S's. You got your PhD.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing in between those, were you teaching as well?
Yes.
Yeah, you were doing your hours.
Oh my gosh! And anybody who anybody who has the jobs where you have to get a certification, that is like a whole different. Like, you might as well get another degree.
Yeah.
So to teach, especially special education in New York City, I had to take 7 exams at the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I was substituting as I took those exams, substituting, taking the exams, keeping a smile on my face, knowing that one day this was going to expire, and then I would be able to chill, and relax a little. So yeah, did that. I was still teaching in the interim. Absolutely. And you're right. We do have to find middle game, like middle plans, which was substituting. And then, so yeah, I became a teacher. Yeah.
And so, and then I think you said you did special ed.
I love special ed.
Yeah.
I would teach nothing but special education.
And I think that kind of goes back to you're constantly giving back. I mean, you gave back to the projects when you were a kid. As a grown up, you're giving back to, the special ed kids. I think, that's, just part of your personality. And so we're here at the tail end of your journey. You've accomplished so much. You've gotten your master's, your
no
PhD.
Tail end, not for you nor me.
No. But the tail end of this story. Sorry, okay. The tail end of this current journey and this current story. If there was something that you could go back and tell yourself, younger version of you, what type of advice would you give yourself?
I would be like, girl, be a mechanic, be a carpenter, be a plumber, because houses are where the big money is. That's what I would tell young Persjha. I'm just playing, even though that's somewhat true. So part of me is not playing. um, but to be honest with you, Raul, I think what I would tell myself is the same thing that my community, my friends like you, and everyone else has been telling me all along, which is you'll be all right. You'll be all right. There'll be better days. Keep your head up. Don't dwell. I clearly, as your friend, have walked amongst the right people. You know what I mean? So, that's another one. Keep close to good people. There are people that will want to see you thrive because they're not intimidated by you thriving because they themselves are thriving. And then there are other people, unfortunately, who see their way to destruction and they want that for you because who are you? Why do you deserve more than them? You know? Mm-hmm. Surrounding yourself with good people, I would say probably at an earlier age, I would tell myself to take risks. Mm-hmm. That analogy that we talked about, the river always flowing and you either want to be safe or you want to take a risk. Mm-hmm. I would have taken them earlier. I'm going to be honest with you. If I believed in myself, if I believed that I could purchase a home earlier in life, I would be a millionaire already. Because I've always lived in prime real estate, you know? So and on my journey, it was crazy. It was two of my friends who lived and grew up in the house that was like, girl, this is not out of your league. You can do this. To me, I was like, no, I'm from buildings. I'm from the projects. Rich people have houses. I don't got it like that. This is what I told myself. So even surround yourself with people that are not exactly like you. Welcome people with different mentalities from different walks of life into your journey because you learn something different from all of them, you know?
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed having you here. I'm glad we were able to tell your story. I know there's a lot more for you in the future. And I expect a lot more
now. Oh my gosh, I got stories on stories, but I can't clog your airtime like that.
No, it's all good. And we'll probably, we'll circle back around in the future and try to get another update on Persjha and see how you're doing. So, well, thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody for listening. I hope we were able to get some perspective from this, and hopefully you guys will continue to tune in and join me as we continue to learn how to say success in Spanglish.
Wepa!